Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are the multi-level institutional governance, oversight, policy, and evaluation group. Our group, we have people from what feels like all disciplines across university. I'm Saravuth and I are public policy students, and we have a PhD communication and media students, political science, computer science students, as well as information students. So it's been very interesting to work with such a diverse group of students over the semester. Outside of Ford, outside of our public policy department, we would not have had this opportunity. So yeah, it was great to work with you all. But jumping right in. So we essentially framed our time and work around three major sectors, markets. We focused on higher education, specifically chatbots, the way that the generative AI suite has been deployed at the University of Michigan, and its implications for graduate education, which a group member of ours, Erin Leary, a PhD student in American culture, has led. And we focused on public administration, specifically the way that LLM models are being used at the Cambodian Ministry of Post and Telecommunications. That has been led by Saravuth, Andy, Austin, yes, in large part. And we have lastly focused on public safety with our group member Shin leading the research on that in terms of how security robots are being deployed in the US in public and private settings. So looking at higher education at the University of Michigan, we have essentially done background research on the way that the UMGPT has, the way it originated and the way that it's evolved from a governance standpoint over the last 3 years. Immediately after ChatGPT was released in November 2022, almost 4 years ago, the University of Michigan immediately coordinated a generative AI advisory committee that issued an advisory report on Gen AI evaluation, use, and development. At the same time, the University of Michigan became the first university in the world to provide a custom suite of Gen AI tools to the student and faculty community. And that was immediately following the release of ChatGPT. So it was a very quick response in terms of initiating an advisory committee, but also implementing a specific suite of Gen AI services for our community. And since then, over the last 3 years, the conversation has shifted from whether AI should be allowed and in terms of from whether AI should be allowed to how it's being used and how it should be governed, from governed to support research, teaching, and all related university activities. So yeah, Erin did background research on this evolution and also went through and interviewed several people across university in the Center for Research on Learning and Teaching, the Office for Digital Education, Online and Digital Education, as well as the Office of the Vice President for Research. So if you want any more insight on that, she has a poster this afternoon where she'll be able to go more in depth about that.
And the second part is on the multi-level institutional governance. So we actually proposed the study with the Ministry of Post and Telecommunications of Cambodia. So in government nowadays, we can see that it has been the increase of AI use within the government themselves to help with the administrative burdens and also to boost the efficiencies within the government. But it's also come up with the some of the unforeseen risk and some issues that could happen in the governments as well. So for our main research question for this part on the multi-level institutional governance is on the how and under what circumstances do bureaucrats use Gen AI. So we focus on the three main attitude and context. First is do staff actually trust in the AI use that they are using? Second is whether or not there are clear organization internal policies for the government official to be using AI, whether or not like within like during the work, do they upload some sensitive informations that should not be uploading into the AI itself, or whether or not they are using it like their own personal accounts like outside of the work, which is not being monitored by like the workplace themselves. And on the third part is on how sensitive is the test, whether like it's a routine announcement, can they use it? And when it comes to like involvement of data that's including like confidential informations, like in how do they use all of these tools. And with these three focus is actually like come out with the four main behaviors that we are measuring. First is whether staff use AI or not using AI at all, and which tool they are using, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, or other AIs, like the one that is coming out later on. And taken together, it's actually revealed the internal culture around the AI usage inside the government ministry themselves. And for the research, we plan to actually conduct it into three different stages. The first one would be the qualitative interview to actually establish the baseline to understand what AI behavior actually exists within the ministry under which they're actually like currently using. And after that, we will use what we have collected and we will administer the anonymous survey that we plan to conduct with 300 ministry employees. And of course, it will be anonymous and we will not ask them direct question, oh, do you upload sensitive information into the AI model? But instead, we will use the vignette experiment, which means that we give them some sort of like case. For example, you are sitting and you are working on this sort of documents. What would be do you think it is appropriate to do action A, B, or C or not? So by asking them to evaluate the appropriateness of each of the usage, and of course each of the person will be like given slightly different scenarios, and then we will ask them to evaluate like the appropriateness of that and see whether or not they understood or whether or not they would be using it appropriately. And especially like taking together all of these design, we also focus on the importance of the Khmer language, which is the local Cambodian language performance as well, because not all generative AI are actually capable of the local language. So we will also measure to see like how staff perception on how well the AI actually handle the local Khmer context. So taking all of this together, this design allow us to study not just whether or not bureaucrats are capable of using, but how are they strategically using generative AI in all of their works in the everyday life. Yeah.
So our third area of study was the deployment of security robots in public safety settings. And this research was built around a quantitative survey with 300 participants, where a nationally representative survey where they were asked about how they felt about security robots being deployed. And the main takeaway was that the concern was less centralized around their level of comfort with the security robot, but how the institutions, how the companies or public agencies that are deploying the security robots are handling the data that is generated. So this was significant. This was a significant finding in terms of understanding how people think and feel about, how the public thinks and feels about the way whether and how security robots are being deployed, and what area of policy in terms of governance we should focus on. And so the key takeaway was that public concerns are not shaped by a deployment setting, but are consistently centered on data practices, specifically how companies are collecting and using their data, and how government agencies are using their data as well. So let's see, break. Yeah. So we are across all three areas. We were we were essentially gathering background on how AI is being deployed in different institutional settings, and what kind of practices and policies are being developed in real time to keep up.